continue with the non-stationary time series analysis with modern signal processing techniques. And today I want to discuss an interesting topic, which is actually still under development, and we do not yet know how to properly apply it to real data, but it has been a breakthrough which has shown its potential, and it is based on a very nice idea called Chirplet transform. And Chirplet transform was first introduced maybe in 1988, which is very old, 30, 40 years ago. And what is the challenge? We try to use the Chirplet transform. The main challenge is the following. Okay, I now give you a function f, which is a summation of two functions, f1 and f2. And in this signal, you see that the signal is actually a summation of two chirps. The first chirp has frequency increasing, the blue one. The second one has frequency actually decreasing, the red one. Okay, you have instantaneous frequency 24 plus 6 pi, but you have the decreasing instantaneous frequency, so you have two chirps. And if you remember, when we discussed time frequency analysis before, usually we need oscillatory components to have spectral gap. That is, the instantaneous frequency should be different, and the difference should have a lower bound. But in this signal, obviously, there is no spectral gap, and they overlap precisely. For this signal, it looks very interesting, right? There's some pattern around third second and so on. And if you run short-time Fourier transform or the spectrogram, you run reassignment, which we haven't systematically introduced, but this you can view as a Synchrosqueezing transform in both time frequency and the frequency axis. And we will come back to reassignment even later. This is Synchrosqueezing. This is second order Synchrosqueezing, which is in some sense quite interesting, right? Because you can get the so-called instantaneous frequency, but at a third second, there is an interference. And this interference, well, how to interpret it? And the most important question is, hey, in this signal, we actually have two components, but we also know their instantaneous frequencies. But from these pictures, it is not clear or easy to say what do we see, or what is the instantaneous frequency, or what is the component, which part belongs to which. We cannot answer any of that. And then the question is, can we identify if there are two components? Second, can we reconstruct each of them? That will be the challenge and the mission. Chirplet transform is introduced to handle this kind of idea. Okay, and Chirplet transform, as you can see, there's a chirp and there's a lit. Lit means a small window or something. So what we do is, as you can imagine, we try to do the transform using Chirplet combined with the window. Why window? Because first, just like short-time Fourier transform or Synchrosqueezing transform, it is a non-stationary signal, so we want to apply this divide and conquer idea. We divide, chop the signal into pieces, and over each piece, we try to do the transform. But transform what? We know that, hey, the signal has chirpy information, or it has chirpy behavior. So we want to apply some chirp when we do the transform. And how does it look like? It is actually a transform. After the transformation, it depends on time, frequency, and the chirp. T, c, and the lambda. So it is defined on a three-dimensional Euclidean space. and you use a window G, which is a Schwarz function. And what you do is you have a function f, and you do the integration against a Schwarz function. This G is a Schwarz function, okay? And this E, because C, this is Fourier part, which is the frequency. And here you have dot minus t square, and square is the chirp part. No matter what, both are bounded. They are bounded by 1. So this is again still a chirp function. Schwarz function. So you can always define it if f is a distribution, tempered distribution. Okay, so we sometimes call C frequency and the lambda the chirp rate. And this is actually what you can show in a time frequency chirp plan, or you call this time frequency chirp representation. You see that, well, there's a curve, another curve, right? Which tells you there are two components. But over a third second, you see there is still a very strong interference. So that it's difficult to determine what is what, which is which. So that is the traditional Chirplet transform. But it is already very useful. It already gives us some information that is have some kind of chirp separation. So you can say, oh, there will be two components maybe, although there will be some kind of interference, but how? And okay. And from the time frequency chirp representation, you can try to get time frequency representation. What you do is nothing but, as you can imagine, you just integrate against the chirplet, the chirp axis, so that you only get time and frequency information. So that is the time frequency representation of the chirplet transform. So you do the integration in the chirp axis and get right hand side. The main limitation, as I mentioned before, is this interference. And this interference comes from something very precise. For example, if you take f, a function, and the g, a Gaussian function, you can precisely do the calculation of the Chirplet transform. And that is how it looks like. You see that there will be a lot of interference. There is a lot of interference. And this interference is not very easy to identify, because it is hard to say or use threshold or anything. So it has this limitation, because when C is sufficiently close to the interference part, then the Chirplet transform is of order, just this order, not very good. The decay is not very good. Okay, so let's come back to the general chirp transform. The chirp transform of L1 function is actually defined on this way, which is a very classical topic in harmonic analysis. You have polynomial oscillatory term, and the Chirplet transform, again, just like before, is nothing but you take G, a window, combined with it. And there are several good properties of Chirplet transform that are in parallel of Fourier transform. For example, if function is W11, then you will get some kind of decay, and this is if f is L1, then the Chirplet transform is uniformly continuous. So if f is L1, and also x is in L1, then the Chirplet transform is differentiable, and you have these similar properties like in Fourier transform. Moreover, the Chirplet transform is not weak type PQ, if P and Q satisfy some properties, and there is no pressure like 0. Okay, the part I mentioned here is that if you look at the signal, the chirp signal, what is interesting is at time 0, you see there is no cancellation at all. There's no oscillation at all around 0. So that is kind of the reason that generates troubles. Okay. And what we did before was, the Chirplet transform is useful, but it seems to suffer from this spreading effect or uncertainty principle. And this uncertainty principle is actually worse compared with Fourier transform. In Fourier transform, you have window, right? And the window you have spreading, but the spreading decay is not that bad. But in Chirplet transform, because the chirplet is in quadratic terms, so the decay is slower. So then, how can we handle it? What can we do? So we considered to combine the idea of Synchrosqueezing transform to Chirplet transform. And the basic idea is, again, very simple. We try to use the phase information in the Chirplet transform and use the phase information to sharpen the time frequency chirp representation. And this is the overall idea. Okay, you take a chirp, very good chirp, and you evaluate its Chirplet transform, and you try to evaluate its partial t, partial c, then you will see some kind of nasty formula, and then you can continue and do a lot. Okay, and I will not go into details because all these are just algebraic calculation. Then at the end, you will get some quantities called mu f and omega f. Okay, and the so-called Synchrosqueezing Chirplet transform, or SCT, is nothing but you use the omega f and the mu f to reassign the frequency and the chirp, so that you have omega f that gives you the information about frequency, and the mu f that gives you the information about chirp. Okay, and all the others, for example, this H alpha, that is exactly the same as before. You have some kind of delta-like behavior, and the H is a smooth function, decays fast, and so on. And this is the result. If you just apply this squeezing, then you see that this part that has a very strong interference disappears. And you get two curves, which is nice, isn't it? But you may say that, oh, come on, you have to take a lot of differentiation. So in practice, differentiation is not really good, right? Because noise will be amplified by differentiation. So differentiation. And that is a very common question, even if you apply Synchrosqueezing. People will say, hey, come on, you take differentiation. But do we really take differentiation? Turns out, no, we don't. Actually, because all these formulas, differentiations, have equivalent integration forms, just like in Synchrosqueezing, although it looks very nasty. If you just do the differentiation and the taking ratio and do all the calculation carefully, that is what you get. The only thing you get will be Chirplet transform with different windows, either g or g second derivative or g prime x, etc. That is what you get. So this is numerically how you implement it. You use different windows to calculate Chirplet transform, and you just combine them combine them in this way, and omega as well. So what you see is, hey, this is the frequency, and this is the correction, and so on. Very nice. So numerically, you can implement it easily, and here is the code you can find online that implements everything. And this is the time frequency representation enhancement. You see that the traditional the traditional Chirplet transform time frequency chirp representation, if you convert it into Chirplet transform, time frequency representation, well, it is not clear about what's going on here, right? And there will be a lot of interference. But if you actually do short-time Synchrosqueezing, then kind of nicer around this region, isn't it? And if you focus on the part that has interference, you see, wow, right now it has a very good separation and the contrast has been highly enhanced. And this nonlinearity is actually much more nonlinear compared with synchrosqueezing, because in synchrosqueezing we only need to reassign the frequency axis. But in the Chirplet transform, we somehow need to combine combine frequency and the chirp domains together. So if you look at the frequency eta and the chirp rate gamma, and you focus on everything fixed time, and you focus on the c and the lambda, okay, and find everything that is close to eta, c, and the lambda. That is what you have. That is the picture you get. It is kind of nonlinearly distributed on the frequency chirp domain, and that is over the interference time. You have something quite beautiful, actually. But we were actually not very happy about that kind of implementation, because as I mentioned here, at time 0, actually you have some kind of part that cannot be easily cancelled out because it is just like 0. So what we found was, suppose you have a function, okay, that is 0 at time 0, or you choose a window that is 0 at 0, then you can somehow cancel the chirp signal at time 0. And in this case, you will see that the Chirplet transform will decay much faster. And there are certainly some conditions you can put about function at 0 point. Okay? So, what we can do? Either signal is good or the window is good. But signal usually is given, we cannot change the signal ourselves. So the only thing we can do is change the window, right? So let's consider different windows. And we hope the window to decay, to vanish at 0. So this is the window we considered before, which is a Gaussian window. At time 0, it is obviously not 0. But how about if we consider this window, x squared exponential minus pi squared or pi x squared? You see, it is 0 at 0. So how about if we consider this window, we call it G2 or G1, I forgot the terminology, but whatever. Then, what you do is, if you do so, then you can find some constant c, okay, so that if lambda minus lambda 1 is less than lambda minus lambda 2, then you have some very nice decay. Okay, and this will help us and allow us to achieve a better time frequency chirp representation, and this is the result. You see, if you use G0, the Gaussian window, this is what happens. You have slow decay here. If you use G2, even without synchrosqueezing, you see, it has already much better contrast because the decay is much faster. And even with G2, the time frequency chirp representation is already good. It tells you there are two components. If now you consider G2, then you see it is much more concentrated. Okay, and this is the time frequency chirp representation of synchrosqueezing Chirplet transform with G2. Okay, and we can take a look at several different locations. For example, this is at time t1, and this is G0, original G0, and this is time 1, and this is time 0. Time 1, you have two different frequencies. Okay, but time t0, you have one frequency. And in the Chirplet transform, you can see a lot of interference. Okay, but after synchrosqueezing transform, you see 2 points, very clear. Okay, and the synchrosqueeze Chirplet transform, you see at the interference point, you have 2 points as well. but there are some small perturbation which are not very good. But if you use G2, then actually you can see they are much more concentrated. Okay, and even in the original Chirplet transform, this kind of interference is somehow better alleviated in some sense, but still you have a lot of interference in the middle. And again, there are some linearity. So what I show you here is if you use G0 and you saw this picture before, and if you use G2, another window, then there will be nonlinearity you can see. So there are some quite interesting nonlinearities which we don't fully understand yet. The final topic will be the reconstruction. The second question we want to answer, right? The first question was, how many components are there? What will be the instantaneous frequency? Can we identify them? Yes, by Synchrosqueezing Chirplet transform, we have answered it. The second question is, how about reconstruction? How about reconstruction? Okay, so what we can consider is, for example, for each component, you have some Chirplet behavior. Then locally, you can approximate it by some linear chirps, only locally. And for the Chirplet transform of CFK, you have this formula, which you can write down precisely. Very nice. So we can say, hey, from this formula, then Fk, okay, the k's component, here, we can approximate it by just doing the Chirplet transform and divided by G check. That's not crazy. It's not crazy, right? What we can do it. But would that really be the best? We will see, because you see how the instantaneous frequency of chirp come from omega k and the mu k, so we can use omega k and the mu k to approximate it. So this will be the reconstruction formula. But it looks good actually, and usually it is very nice. But it's still a but, right? Because if you do so, then in the interference time, that is time 30 seconds when two instantaneous frequency overlaps, then unfortunately the reconstruction is not ideal. You will see some interference. And this interference come from where? Come from interference. So you need to have some modifications. So here is the main trouble. The main trouble is you get everything. You have multiple components. And multiple components, although you can write it in this formula, but there will be some kind of interference in between. Because this G check, okay, it still has decay. And if two instantaneous frequencies are exactly the same, then you will, even the chirp has been separated, you will have some interference. And this interference leads to what we saw before. Because in the previous formula, we fit each signal separately. We did not take this interference into account. So what we should do is actually taking the formula into account. That is, we respect the interference, the summation interference. So what we do is we construct some matrices, A, X, okay, and this A comes from the G check of each component, okay, and you also have the Wembley transform, the Chirplet transform. And then with this formula, you know that this is X hat will be some kind of combination AT and each component. So if you want to reconstruct XT, we just need to take inverse, isn't it? So you just do some kind of regression type thing to reconstruct each component, and this is the result. After you consider that correction, this is the reconstructed error, which you have alleviate the troubles over the frequency interference region. Okay, and there will be some kind of robustness to noise result, but we do not have full statistical analysis yet. But no matter what, you can see that the result is reasonably well, even if the signal is contaminated by noise. And you can apply it to the wolf counting problem in howling. You have multiple wolves howling, and this is the signal. And the question is, well, sometimes one wolf is howling, and the other one is also howling, but one is chirping up, one is chirping down. Then can we separate all the signals and combine and count the wolves and even reconstruct the wolfing? Okay, and this is the result. There will be some timing, just keep in mind, and the signal is very complicated, but relatively clear. And then this is the result you get. You see, it's kind of complicated, not easy to see. This is a Chirplet transform, a Synchrosqueezing Chirplet transform. And here you see there is an instantaneous frequency interference here. Okay, and well, not too easy to see too much, to be honest, but you can already see some improvement compared with the traditional Chirplet transform. And you can dig into and try to count the component at different time using different windows. For example, this is G0, this is using G2 window, and at time 16.16, there are two instantaneous frequencies. You can see 2 points. Quite nice, isn't it? In 16.43, there is only one instantaneous frequency. Let me remind you, 14.43, it is here, right? 14.57 is here. Then you can see that already this region, there is one component, and there are actually two components that you can somehow identify. Not perfect, but reasonably well, because the chirps are actually different. The chirps are different, but here it's harder to see. Okay, and here you can see also something. Okay, so I will not say this is the final story of this kind of frequency interference or frequency overlapping signal analysis. That will be the final tool. No, it's far from that, but this is one step further to study this kind of signal. So there are many open questions and the future directions. Well, it's just an FYI. For example, how to handle more general chirps, maybe polynomial chirps. Yes, I will show you a very recent literature that was published last week. Okay, any more algebraic relationships in the phase, which we don't know? How to speed up the algorithm? The algorithm right now is very slow because, as you can see, you have to handle 3-dimensional space. How to handle wave shape function when the oscillation is not sinusoidal? How to do it? How about its robustness to non-stationary noise? Can we prove it? Even quantify its distribution for the inference purposes? Okay, and the most important part is it is not practical at all right now. I will not claim that it's practical because it's my work. No, it's not practical, and we need a lot of improvement to make it functionable for real-world data. So this is an open and ongoing project. So there are, what I said, this work published last week in May 11th. They consider high-order Synchrosqueezing Chirplet transform. And there are some other works published last year or 2 years ago. Okay, they are but these two, they do not consider Synchrosqueezing. They only consider Chirplet transform and its application. So that is it.